welcome back to my channel. I'm so glad that you're here. Today we're in a different spot than normal, in my kitchen with my lovely white brick wall that I'm obsessed with. Have a candle lit. I've been so into taper candles lately. I think they just make a whole space like seem so cozy. I just love it. And a Zevia drink. So let's just hop right into today's topic. Disclaimer, my daughter Lainey is laying down cooing and cawing. So if you hear those noises, hopefully it's not too distracting. She's having the time of her life. So today's topic is 8 unpopular parenting opinions. I've seen a handful of videos, a handful of blog posts about this, and so about a month or so ago, my husband and I actually talked through what are things that culture maybe says one way, but like are things that we specifically like want to do different or are doing different. Now, before we hop into it, my eldest is a year and a half, almost a year and a half, and so I haven't been a parent for 20 plus years. I don't have all the knowledge in the world. These are things that we would like to do for our 2 kids and any future kids that we have, things that we are trying to implement as they get older, but we are not perfect. And so this isn't meant to be a list of like, these are the things I want to do because no one else does them and this is the way to go. And these are just the things we feel convicted by that I would like to share with you today. Maybe you agree, maybe you disagree, but I have 8 things that are unpopular when it comes to parenting. The first thing I would like to talk about is that my husband and I would like to not negate our kids' feelings. And that sounds obvious, but I have heard time and time again, just in years of working at daycares and babysitting and just being around kids in general, I have heard so many people say things like, "Oh, why are you crying? Stop crying." And that's the first example that comes to my head. And while as an adult, crying can be stressful, maybe we don't understand why our toddler or our child is crying, that is not the phrase that my husband and I would like to use. Even if we don't think that the reason that they're crying is an appropriate reason to cry, in their mind, they have a reason that they're whining or crying. It could be that they want something. It could be that they're tired, that they're hungry, that they're thirsty, that they're hurt. It could be any of a reason. And even if you as the adult or parent don't see that as a reason to cry, in their mind, you have to remind yourself of their age and think, oh, to them, this is a really big deal. And I would way rather help them work through those emotions, help them work through those big feelings that they're having, rather than just say, don't cry, boys don't cry. I do not like that. I do not want our son to grow up thinking that boys don't cry, because it is 1000% healthy for men to cry, and it's actually more of a problem if they don't, because everybody goes through emotions, and that's just a common response to feeling a lot of different things, like feeling sad or any of a feeling. So we want to always be there with our child. Yes, that can be hard because yeah, maybe you're trying to fold the laundry while cooking breakfast, while getting dressed, while doing this, and your child is crying. But taking that moment to stop, and again, I'm not perfect at this, but taking that moment to stop, look them in the eye and say, I understand that you're sad. How can I help you? Or I'm here for you. Just telling them that instead of saying, don't cry. Why are you crying? And like our tone too, just can go so far. So that's number 1. The second unpopular parenting opinion that my husband and I are following is that we do not want to call our kids good or bad. I would way rather say the phrase, they are a good kid who's making a poor decision. They are a good kid making a great decision. Because I don't want my kids growing up thinking that their identity, who they are at the core, is in relation to their actions. Because as parents, we still make mistakes. We make mistakes all the time, and yet that doesn't make you a bad mom for giving your kids pizza instead of broccoli now and then, you know? That's an action. We wouldn't necessarily say, you're a bad mom because you made that one thing. Our kid pushes a kid over one time. Why do we say they're a bad kid? No, they're a good kid. they just made a poor decision. Again, going back to their feelings, they could be feeling frustrated, they could be feeling anger, they could be feeling sad or lonely, and you just need to give them that time to say, hey, we don't push, that's not okay, but that doesn't mean that you're a bad kid for making that decision. Yes, let's try to make better decisions and help them through that, but they are not a bad kid just because they make that decision. And that might seem obvious, but so many times I hear, oh, be a good girl. Oh, you were bad today. Oh, don't make a bad decision. And it's like, well, I don't want them tying their actions to their identity. And that goes all the way to scripture. God doesn't say, well, if you don't sin, then I love you. It's, no, who you are at the core, I see you as perfect. I see you as beautiful. I love you so much. Despite everything that you've done, everything that you've done is in the past. We are moving forward, and we are Christ's creation, and he loves us. And so I want to instill that in our kids, that just because you made a bad decision doesn't mean you are a bad kid. Those are two different things. The third unpopular parenting opinion that we are following is that our kids do not have an option whether they will come to church with us or not. Now, some people might disagree with that. They don't want to force their kids into anything, but my husband and I are Christians. We believe in Jesus, and once our kids are out of the home, that is completely up to them. If they stop going to church, if they don't want to do that, that's their decision. But when they are in the home, we are called to raise them up in the way that we want them to go. That's biblical. And it is on us as parents, their parents, to raise them in the church, raise them in the Bible. They're going to hear us reading the Bible out loud. They're going to read it as a family. We're going to pray before meals. And we will grow up praying for our kids, praying that they accept Jesus into their life and live a life of that, because that is what we believe, and we want to instill that. And we never want to be forceful, but at the same time, we want them raised up in the church. So when they're 18, when they're out of the home, it's their decision. But for now, that is our decision as parents. And actually, we are called to do that, to raise them up in the church, to prioritize our faith. And I want them to see that. I want them to see my husband and I live it out so that they live it out as well. The next one is probably pretty controversial, and that is that my husband and I will not revert to spanking our kids as being our number one form of discipline. Now, I've heard of some people say spanking equals discipline, but I disagree. I think there are many ways you can discipline your kids without having to spank them. Now, certain personalities of kids, I do think they are maybe those hard-headed kids who nothing else works, then maybe. But this is not going to be the form of discipline that my husband and I gravitate towards. This kind of goes back to the first one, but just because our kid makes a decision that is poor, they make a bad decision, I don't want our first reaction to them misbehaving to be to spank them. I want us to work through those feelings, work through those emotions. Why did you make that decision? Why did you bite someone? Now, if that biting continues and continues and continues, yeah, that's not good. And you can't just say, oh, you were frustrated, you were sad, I'm sorry, don't do that. No, that's not what I mean at all. Obviously, they keep biting someone over and over and over. Yeah, they are gonna need some type of repercussion. Is that the right word? Penalty? I don't know what the word is. My son is only a year and a half, so we have not really gotten to that point of we haven't lived through a child's whole toddler life yet. And so again, speaking from what we want to do, what I've read on, what I've researched, what my husband and I have talked about, and all of that, we don't want our first response to be to spank. We want to help them learn in that process of navigating their emotions so that they don't act out and do those things. Does that make sense? Obviously, this is super controversial and I don't want to ruffle any feathers, but we just don't see spanking as the number one approach that can have positive impact through their whole life. I'll leave it at that. The next one is pretty vague, so I'm gonna go into some detail, but that is, we want to call things as they are. We don't give kids enough credit for how smart that they are. if we try to shorten words, shorten phrases, just because we think that they're young, we're actually doing them a disservice, because their language and all that is developing by you talking. And so if we never give them that full explanation of what we're doing, yeah, maybe don't give them the 10-minute long version of what you're doing when they ask why. But my husband and I want to explain things as they are, tell our kids what actual, like, the full word of something is, even if they can't pronounce it. Like, I want their language to build up and them to not grow up thinking that the refrigerator is actually called the cooling rack. I don't know, just a weird example. Give them the actual name. They might not understand why you're writing a check to pay a bill, but tell them that's what you're doing. I have to write this check. This is like money, and I have to pay so that our lights can stay on. They are going to understand that. Don't say, oh, well, we have Excel energy and this check relates to this account and this does this, and just say, we need to keep our lights on. They need to work. We need to be able to run our water. We need to be able to XYZ, use our oven, use our dishwasher. We need to be able to use these things, so I have to pay money to the people who will keep that going for us. They're gonna understand that. They're going to thank you later for actually explaining things to them. And so that's what my husband and I would like to do. And on a little bit more of a serious note when it comes to this, I want our kids growing up knowing what their body parts are called. Because if something were to ever happen where they were gonna need to explain something to me, I want them to know what things are called. Plain and simple. I don't need to go into more detail than that. I think you understand. So yeah, my husband and I want to call things as they are. If it's something small, if it's what we're doing, if it's a body part, whatever it is, I want them to know what things are actually called versus using little nicknames or weird noises to describe things. Sixth thing is that I thrift most of our kids' clothes and toys. I really enjoy the whole scavenging. I don't even know, is that a word? Rummaging? I don't know. I really like searching for clothes and toys, finding those things that you're like, oh, that's from Zara. That would normally be a $30 sweatshirt. I found it for $6. Yes, like, score. Rather than buying things new all the time. It can get so expensive. And when your kids, like my daughter's in 6-month clothing right now, in a month or two, she's not gonna be in 6-month clothing. So why go out and spend all this money on new clothes? And same for my son. He drools and spits and eats really well, so he gets food everywhere. Like, do I really need to go buy all these new clothes for him to just get raspberry juice all over and stain it? No. Now, yes, I do buy some things new. I'm not against buying things new. If I was a millionaire, yes, I'd buy everything new. But it's better for the environment to shop used, and I just really like the act of being able to kind of like search the racks and see what kind of good deals I can have. And along with their toys too, I really prefer wooden toys or like rubber or foam. I don't love battery operated things that are plasticky and make a ton of noise. And of course there's a time and place. I'm not against those things, but I just really love those wholesome wooden toys that just are like teaching a kid a skill while they're playing. It's hammering something. It's stacking rings on top of each other rather than just, I'm just gonna hit this and it's gonna make a sound. Does that make sense? I want our toys to have a purpose, and so I'd rather have less toys and have them be like those really good, wholesome, good quality toys than have a bajillion million toys and they're just like, beep, boop, 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 like making noise and sounds all day and really not like helping our kids developmentally. The seventh thing is related to electronics. I am not against electronics. I'm not against technology, but something my husband and I have decided is that our kids will not have their own personal iPad. They will not have their own personal phone for many, 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 many years. I have an elementary education degree, and my husband's done quite a bit of study when it comes to technology with children and just our brains and how our brains are wired and all that in general. So we really don't want our kids to be on technology all day. A lot of schools these days, it's 1-to-1, one kid to one iPad. all day, every day, and then they come home and they're supposed to do their homework on it. And I'm not against the TV. My son is obsessed with drumming. We put on drum videos and he watches them. We put on worship music. I'm not against the TV. We don't have cable, so we're not like watching shows 24/7. I'm not against that. I don't think that's bad. As they get older, we do want to limit the amount of TV usage that's happening. But when it comes to iPads and computers and phones, I think we personally believe that those things are doing more of a disservice to our kids at such a young age, that we would like to prolong the possible, you know, the TikTok, Instagram, YouTube, like all these things that kids these days spend hours upon hours upon hours. A kid in my 3rd grade class, a couple years ago, when I would ask, how was your weekend? Who wants to tell me what they did? He'd raise his hand and he would tell me, I played video games all weekend. And he wasn't joking. He said, it was all day on Saturdays and Sundays. And that's just what he did. That's what his parents allowed him to do. And that's great for them. But I don't want to do that. I want our kids outside. There's so much proven with technology actually affects kids' attention span. There's so many kids these days who struggle with ADHD and being able to pay attention in class, having to constantly like fidget and have something to play with because they don't know how to just sit still and color or build blocks, go play in the leaves, go play in the snow, go play with their friends, go on their bike. Like, I read a book. We really want to raise our kids doing more of those things, being outside, enjoying nature, finding a hobby to put their time in and not having their hobby be video games or watching TikTok or all of those things. The 8th and final parenting unpopular opinion that my husband and I would like to follow that I'll share with you today. We don't want to fight in front of our kids. Now, we're humans. We're going to disagree. We're going to have those disagreements come up. But ultimately, we want our kids to see honor and see respect and see love when it comes to corresponding with each other. Again, yes, they'll see us disagree and they'll hopefully see us work through that disagreement in a healthy way, because that's normal. People are going to disagree because people are people. But we want to ultimately respect and honor and love each other. And if we're fighting and screaming, and not that we fight that way, but like, we just always want to see our kids, have our kids see a healthy marriage. And yes, again, arguing, or like I should say disagreeing, is healthy and they'll see that, but we don't want to like full on have like a fight in front of our kids. I just don't think that's healthy. I don't want them to see us in the way of like, oh, Dad raised his voice at Mom. Is Dad gonna divorce Mom? Like, you know, kids' thoughts spiral. Kids' thoughts just completely like, it's just different. They could see us raising our voice as being really mad at each other and we don't love each other anymore and all that stuff, and we don't want that. They'll see us disagree, they'll see us work through disagreement in a hopefully healthy way, but we don't want to like have a fight in front of our kids. And that's a wrap. I could probably find more to talk about, so if you are interested in that, I can sit down and probably come up with a few more to make a part 2 if you would like. But those are my 8, well, I should say my husband and I's 8 parenting unpopular opinions of things that we want to do with our kids or are doing with our kids, things that we feel convicted, things that we really would like to implement in our home starting now. So let me know if you'd like a part 2. I really appreciate you watching and being here. So I hope that you have a blessed day,